Hey, somebody's got to get the Christmas lights out of the attic. You did? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Here, you and I will use common sense and all the wisdom we can muster to move beyond what is true and go all the way to the truth. With actual listeners in more than 100 countries, I am The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to some of the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. Our sponsor this week is ITAM.org. That's IAITAM.org. They're the only global member-based training organization dedicated to meeting the needs of IT asset management professionals. You know, this is the only global training organization turning out these IT asset managers that corporations immediately hire all over the world. So check them out. I mean, how would you like to complete an accredited online program and get a degree that is actually in huge demand? Okay, you're saying in huge demand by whom? Well, just go to itam.org and look through their client list. I mean, you'll see everyone from Sony Pictures to NASA to the United Nations. Google is one of ITAM's clients. Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple. These companies only hire people that ITAM has trained because ITAM offers the only accredited degree in the field. That's IAITAM.org. And tell Dr. Barb that Andy sent you. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And I am very excited about our guest today. Our guest today worked in the service department of a car dealership one time and has had a life that many would consider magical. He has worked very hard. And I think, you know, it's awesome to see somebody who has taken a gift that God gave them and has really continued to use it to the best of their abilities and made the most out of it. And this is one of those kind of people that I have admired for a long time. I've known him for a while, and I think that introducing somebody you love to somebody you love is one of the coolest things in the world. And so you guys who watch and listen to The Professional Noticer, you are my friends, and I want to introduce you to somebody that I love and admire. Please welcome Jimmy Fortune. Hey, buddy.
Thank you, Andy. So good to be with you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I hope I can live up to it. But
Oh, listen, man. I look at you, and obviously, we met each other when you came to be with the Statler Brothers when Lou DeWitt left. And so, how many years ago was that?
That was 1982. Lou suffered from Crohn's disease, as a lot of people know, and they needed someone to fill in for him. So I met him in 1981, Thanksgiving Eve, 1981, at a ski resort in Virginia. I was working as a service writer at a place called Berlin Porsche Audi in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay.
And I was playing 6 nights a week, music 6 nights a week, every week. I mean, for years. And I just happened to go to a jam session one night. I was off the night before Thanksgiving, 1981. Met Lou DeWitt that night. Did not know that he suffered from Crohn's disease, but we became friends, and we talked, and I admired him, and he admired me and listened to me sing, and we became friends. But I thought I'd probably never hear from him again after that.
Now, how old were you at that time, Jimmy?
26 going on 12.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And so, like right after Christmas that same year, between Christmas and New Year's, I got a call from the Statler Brothers to come over and talk to them. I didn't even know what it was about, but I went over and met them, and and I got to talk to him there at the office, and they told me what was going on with Lou. He's going to be out for about 6 months, and that they needed somebody to fill in. And so at the time, I was working pretty hard, and I was I worked myself into a situation where I was pretty sick, and I was anemic, and I just didn't feel good. Wasn't singing up to par, but I went and I sang with them around the piano at Harold's house. We went down to Harold's house, and I thought, I'm on my way to Harold Reid's house to sing around the piano. And I said, I'm going to have something to tell my grandchildren one of these days.
Wow.
Even if this doesn't work out, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so I told them, I was sick, and I really wasn't up to par. But anyway, they said, well, we're going to audition about a bunch of others in Nashville, and we're going to be gone for about 2 weeks, and we'll give you a call back and let you know something. And so long story short, they did call me back, and I came to Nashville my first time on an airplane.
Really?
Yeah, it was my first time on an airplane. It was the day after Air Florida. Remember the Air Florida thing that happened in D.C.?
And that's your first flight.
The first flight, the day after that, and I flew into Pittsburgh, and they were pushing snow off the airplane up there. And I'm on the airplane, and I flew from Weir's Cave, Virginia, into a little puddle jumper into Pittsburgh, then from Pittsburgh to Nashville. But they were pushing the snow off the airplane, literally. and this guy, and I'm kind of singing a little bit to myself and just kind of tapping my foot. This guy next to me said, "Man, why in the world are you so happy when they're pushing snow off this airplane?" I said, "You ever hear the Statler Brothers?" He said, "Well, yeah." He said, "They're like my favorite group." I said, "I'm going to Nashville to audition for the Statler Brothers." And he stood up and said, "This guy's going to Nashville to audition for the Statler Brothers." Everybody started, "Yeah, let's go. Let's get this on."
Oh my gosh. Good grief.
So it just lifted everybody's spirits, We were like, and of course I got to Nashville, and nervous, anxious, but I didn't care. I mean, I was just going to audition for the Statler. I just knew something out in my mind, in my heart, that I was meant to do that. And I just felt like everything was going to be all right. Even though I wasn't singing up to par, I just kind of felt like it was going to be okay.
That's very unusual because Lou basically picked his own replacement.
Pretty much. I mean, it was, I talk about God things in my life. Sure. And there's been so many God things, and I attribute it to look back at it, even when I was in my youth and doing a lot of things wrong, I always attribute it to my mother's prayers. My mother prayed. She was a prayer warrior, and she kept praying for us kids. I was number 7 of 9 children.
Wow.
And Daddy went broke making fortunes. But I attribute it to my mom's prayers. Still today, even though she passed away back in 2000, I still feel her prayers. And because I always tell people, I said, those prayers that you're praying for your children, don't quit. You keep doing it, because
right.
I believe in prayer. I believe it's one of the strongest tool we have in this universe to do anything. And so I still feel her prayers right today, leading me and guiding me along the way, even through the hard times. There always seems to be somewhere God wants me to be, to give me a purpose.
Right.
He's given me a purpose, and the purpose in my music is to promote, forgiveness, to promote grace, to promote, just when something bad happens in your life, that you don't just stop. You get on your knees and you pray to ask God, what next? What do you have for me next? Where do you want me to be? What do you want me to do? And if you keep that open communication with Him, He will always put you in the right places that you don't even realize sometimes that you're in the right place when you are. Right. That's kind of what this whole journey has been for me. There's been things that's happened. I sit back and shake my head. I have a plan from what I want to do, and then all of a sudden God has another plan, and it turns out to be better than what I even had planned. Right, so how do you explain that?
Wow. I'm going to make sure that my wife, Polly, watches this particular podcast, because, she says, we have 2 boys, 21 and 18. And, Austin has been out in Idaho hunting in -9 weather. And then Adam catches sharks off the beach for a living. So Polly says that her boys have really increased her prayer life. And so I'm going to tell her, just listen to Jimmy, keep praying, keep praying.
Oh, it's so true, man. And like I said, I just look back at all of it in awe of God and what He's done. And I've learned to, even with all this stuff that's going on, to let my fear become my faith. You know, this is
Right.
where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Because our children are looking at us, and our children's children are going to be looking at them and us, and they're going to see how we handle all this. And if we look at it in the positive way, that God, He has the last say, He's in control, and that to trust Him that He will take care of us, and He will. And so, you know, like I said, we are in this position for a reason. We're here for a reason. And I know when I do my shows and concerts, which we haven't done a lot lately, we've done a few here and there, but when someone comes up and, as you know, tells you that something you did or said in your book or a song that I sung or touched them and led them to Christ, or led them to a more positive life, then you just look up and say, thank you, God, because this is what you meant for me to do. Right. It's not always about the accolades and the money and all this stuff. It's not about that. It's about your purpose to become something that guides someone in a positive way in their life, you know.
Yeah.
And I really want to be that for my children and for my grandchildren, because there's so many things out there that to really take them off the path in this world, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, King Solomon wrote that the determination to become wise was the first step in becoming wise. And so just wanting to be that for your children and your grandchildren, you know, I mean, and you already are. Do you know that you, when you joined the Statlers, you put kind of a little kink in what I did? Did you know that?
Oh, really?
I didn't know that. I've never told you this, but I've told a bunch of people this when I've just talked about you and just how proud I am of you and how much I like you and what a great guy you are. I've told them this story. You know, when I worked as a comedian and opened for you guys a bunch of times, well, I was opening for them when Lou was there too. And so Don and Harold had a specific way they wanted you guys introduced. And it was, you know, you mentioned this, and you get down to, ladies and gentlemen, entertainers on and off the record, Harold, Don, Phil, and Lou, the Statler Brothers. I mean, that's what they wanted, you know. And so they were very specific. That's what they wanted. So I had done that over and over and over. Ladies and gentlemen, entertainers on and off the record, Harold, Don, Phil, and Lou, the Statler Brothers. And so then all of a sudden you're there. And I had done that so many times. And man, I really had to think. And so I would love to hear some of the first times I did it, because I'm sure it kind of went, ladies and gentlemen, entertainers on and off the record, Harold, Don, Phil, and Jimmy, the Statler Brothers. Because I really had to think, oh, Jimmy.
Well, it didn't really sound right. It didn't. Well, it just doesn't.
It may not have sounded right coming out of my mouth, but buddy, it sounded right. They sounded right with what was coming out of your mouth. It was. I mean, I think there's a great history with the Statlers, but there are other groups who have had, you know, somebody come in and replace somebody that you kind of don't remember that person. But the Statler Brothers to everybody is really five people, because Lou was that flowers on the wall, you know, thing, and you wrote. It was just, this kind of blows me away, but everybody needs to know that Elizabeth, which was the Statler, a number one for the Statlers, and it was the CMA Song of the Year was the first song you wrote?
Yeah, it was the first song I wrote. Well,
Good
again, you talk
grief.
about God. You talk about God things. I didn't know I could write because I've been playing music all those years, learning other people's songs,
Sure.
and I always took everything to memory. Everything was memory oriented, so I could learn things pretty quick. But I went to Don and Phil and Harold, and I said, guys, if I write a song, would you guys record it? And Harold, you know how Harold is, because we lost him back in April. He passed away, and I miss him
Right.
so much.
Right.
But he gave me the most honest answer. He said, well, little buddy, if you write a song, we'll record it if it's good enough.
If it's
And
any good.
but
I can hear him.
I had this melody in my head that it was just a beautiful melody that I knew was a real pretty harmony melody. And it was, I mean, all these little things God was feeding me, at the time, like, and I look back on it now and I realize that's exactly what it was. He knew that I needed something. He knew that they needed something, and they needed to go into, because Lou wasn't going to be there, which I told Lou this when he asked me to be a full-time member. I said, well, I'm not going to take your place. I'm going to make a place for myself.
Right. Right.
You will always be the first tenor of this group. I will be the second tenor of this group. And that's the way it's going to be. And that's the way I wanted it to be. I didn't want to take his place. I didn't never want to take anybody's place.
Right.
But then the next day after Harold told me that, I literally took him, sang Elizabeth for him on the bus the next morning. And they said, that's going on our first record with you. And it was on the Today record. It was the third single. It went number one. I won Songwriter of the Year for that song, Song of the Year. And I was like, well, God, okay, what next? What do I do now? And then he gave me My Only Love, which was the song I wrote for my brother Tony. Then that was a number one song. Then Too Much on My Heart was another number one song. It was like year after year there. And More Than a Name on a Wall became a big record for the Statler Brothers, which is a tribute to our veterans, and
right.
written about the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. But there were so many things that God allowed me to do that I look back on, and it went by so fast that I have to pinch myself sometimes to say, because I realized how big the Statler Brothers were before I came along. I never want people to forget ever, and I know they won't. The Statler Brothers, before I came along, it was a different era. It was more nostalgic. It was more historic. It was more of growing up in America in the 50s, 60s, and 70s into the 80s. And then I came along, and then we went into a more of a contemporary kind of a sound, which was the sound with kind of the times. We had to kind of move into that era. And although still keeping what we had in a lot of ways, try to keep that, but with a freshness going into the 80s,
right,
and the 90s and into 2000, which is when we retired. And the TV show came along, which really helped us and really give us a lot of momentum in the 90s from about 1990 to 1997.
Yeah, I did that TV show.
Yeah, and it was one of the first variety shows that had been around for a long, long time, which was a great idea. It mixed country music with other talents as well to bring into it, to kind of make everything a little bit different, so you weren't doing the same thing over and over, which I really appreciated about that show.
Right.
But it was number one cable television show for 7 years, and I was proud to be a part of it. But we covered more ground in that 7 years than we probably did in our whole career because of TV.
It eats it up, doesn't it?
But the songwriting thing, back to that, I didn't know I could write a song, and I didn't really. Sometimes you just have to have a reason. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there with talent that don't even realize they have the talent. They don't even realize until one day they're given the opportunity, and then you say, "Oh, okay," a light bulb goes on. Okay, that's part of my talent too, you know. And I used to think it began with me with singing. I sang with my family in church as a kid, and singing was the thing that kind of brought me to the table. But then I got a guitar when I was 12 years old, and I applied that to playing my guitar with my singing. I thought this light bulb went on. Said, if I can play and sing, at the same time, I'm going to make a living at this.
Yeah.
And I told my daddy that when I got that guitar for Christmas in 1967. He said, "Boy, you're an idiot." He said, "You can't make a living playing guitar." He said, "Why do you think they call it playing?" It's not work.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't listen to my daddy. A lot of times I didn't listen to him. That's one time I'm glad I didn't listen to him, because for some reason I knew when I laid my hands on that guitar and I started singing, playing with it, I knew that was going to be my calling for life.
Right.
And I just wouldn't take no for an answer. I just kept playing and singing, and as much as I could, wherever I could. And then eventually, when I got with the Statler Brothers, I knew that light went on and said, "Hey, Lou wrote songs. You need to write songs, because this is where you make a place for yourself."
Now, our mutual friend, Jimmy Yeary, Jimmy's like my little brother, and
I love him.
He loves your writing style. He mentions you a lot. He talks about you a lot. And of course, Jimmy has a different relationship with you than I do. I mean, we just kind of came from different angles in your life, I suppose. But you had a bunch of number ones. But I mean, you actually just won a Dove Award for a Country Roots album, right?
Album of the year, yeah, which shocked me. I had no idea. I still haven't gotten over it yet. I ain't got my award yet, so I don't know if it's true or yet. Right? But I'm waiting on it to get here so I can hold it. But
that is great. Well, didn't you write? You had a bunch of number ones, but didn't you write another song that was Song of the Year or Songwriter of the Year for?
Well, Songwriter of the Year for My Only Love and for Too Much on My Heart was Song of the Year, which all followed 3 years in a row, actually.
See, that's what Jimmy told me. Jimmy Yeary told me. He said, for somebody who wasn't really thinking about being a songwriter, no songwriter has ever done that. So that's just amazing.
So, you needed that. Like sometimes you just need a reason. Like I said before, the Statler Brothers, if it hadn't been for the Statler Brothers, there wouldn't have been a Jimmy Fortune, I don't believe, because they gave me that break. And sometimes you just need a break. But then again, you have to be willing to take that chance to step out there, and you have to be ready for it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And in your heart, like whenever I went into it, I felt good about it. I felt right about it. I felt like this is really where God wants me to be. And
that's that butterfly effect, though. I mean, I did that book where I kind of reverse engineered the lives of these people, because you go,
right,
this person's so great. You go, yeah, but if it wasn't for that person, this wouldn't. And so, you can say that if it wasn't for the Statlers, there wouldn't have been a Jimmy Fortune. But if there wasn't a Johnny Cash, there wouldn't have been a Statlers, right?
Well, you go back to that. Hey, see how these things kind of play in place, God's plan, and part of being successful, I think, is realizing that there's these stepping stones that you have to be on. That stone has to be there for you to step on before you can make to the next one. And when I look back on it, that's why I don't take credit for anything. The only thing I take credit for is in a relationship with God is making yourself available.
Right.
You have to make yourself available to God, because if you don't, then He can't use you. So if you turn your back and you go down those roads that you want to go down all the time without recognizing those little things that He puts in place for you, and we sometimes, when you get on a journey with God, I think you find those stones by Him guiding you,
Right.
Because if you listen to yourself, sometimes it will take you down a road, a lot of dead end roads.
Yeah.
And so when you realize that God has that purpose, and that light comes on inside of your heart, you start following that light. It will guide you. Sometimes you don't even realize it.
Right. It is.
Because,
It is amazing to look. You look ahead and you're trusting, but you look behind sometimes and you can see God's hand in every step you took. So
yeah, and then sometimes even the mistakes that you made in life, which I've made plenty of them, and I look back and he's even taken those mistakes and turned them around for good.
turned them into something good. Yeah.
Only God can do that. But it's been an amazing thing. Jimmy Urey gives me a lot of. He's always talking to me whenever I'm around him and just picking my brain a little bit about. He's like, "Are you Elizabeth was the first song you wrote?"
I know it.
And he said, "And you wrote it by yourself?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Man," and I mean, I take that. I mean, because I consider him one of the greatest songwriters ever that I've been around.
I'm telling you,
And
he is unbelievable, isn't he?
when I'm in a room with him to write a song or something around him, I feel very intimidated, because I just feel like he's absolutely one of the best. I don't even know if I would try to write a song around him because I think he's that good.
You know what is incredible about Jimmy, which I work with corporations and teams, and in my oddball career, I made a real stride ahead when I recognized a fact about certain people, and that was there are a lot of people, high achievers, who know how to do something. They have an innate talent, they've developed a skill around it, and they know how to do it. But there's a lot of people who know how to apply a principle or how to apply something. But there are very few people that know why what they do works as it does. And that is something about Jimmy Urey that can allow Jimmy to walk into a room and within 5 minutes be literally working on a song that's going somewhere instead of staring at a computer or something, because Jimmy knows why that works as it does. And he can tell you about, and it's amazing to hear him talk about process like that. I would love to get you and Jimmy together, one day around the peace table here and talk about writing, because I write, but it's a different thing. Jimmy and I talk a lot about what I do, versus what he does, and then here you write alone, Jimmy. Is there anybody in Nashville that is in more demand as a co-writer? Because every time Jimmy Urey co-writes a song with somebody, it's this massive hit.
Well, I didn't start co-writing really too much until I came here to Nashville. I co-write quite a bit now,
right,
with a lot of different writers, and we're always writing, not just for the sake of writing a hit song. We just try to write a good song.
Sure.
But Jimmy, yeah, he gets in a room and he knows how to pull the best out of the writers that are in there with him.
Right.
And that's the key to that. And a lot of times, some people who write by themselves, they don't like necessarily take other people's advice or what I call constructive criticism. Sometimes you got to be, when you're sitting in there with another writer and they say, "Oh, no, I don't really like that line," you got to be able to say, "Okay, that's a better line than what I have."
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jimmy has that kind of a great personality that fits that kind of thing,
Yeah.
And so that's what makes him such a great writer. Being able to listen to somebody when they say something and you go, "Oh yeah, that's it. That's better, a whole lot better than what I had. So let's go with it."
Wow. And Jimmy can sing. He can sing great. He can sing his butt off. But how would you like to have a voice that good and then be married to Sonia? Yeah, I mean, just like, yeah.
I was just going to say that. And plus, he's married to my favorite female singer in the world.
I'm telling you.
Sonia Isaacs. And she literally is like an angel. Every time I'm around her, I just go, she's an angel. I mean, right straight out of heaven.
I watch Jimmy and Sonia sing sometimes, and I see this look come over Jimmy's face where he's like, I'm just gonna like be quiet. Because I mean, it's I mean, when he's by himself, man, he's tearing it up. But she starts singing with him, and he gets intimidated really quickly. Well, we won't let him watch this where we're talking about him.
No, but Jimmy here, he don't have to take a back seat to nobody.
No. You know
He's
what
a fine.
I have been. You know what I've been listening to lately? The
Okay.
album that I have been listening to, and I mean, I'm listening to it in the shower, driving, going to bed. I have been listening to this the CD Brotherly Love that you guys did, and I'm gonna tell you something. I'm not promoting this just because you're here. I have been sending video clips to people. I've been telling people, listen to this. I mean, in fact, Matt, before we ever started, he said, we were just kind of getting everything ready in here and getting ready to hook up the link with you. And Matt goes, and I thank God for the lighthouse. He pulled out the Jimmy Fortune part of that. But man, tell me how this project, this is you, Ben Isaacs, who is part of the Isaacs, but promotes her, and Mike Rogers, who, and then Bradley Walker, which I'm kind of blown away. I know you and I know Ben, but I don't know Bradley and Mike, but I am fans now.
Well, one of the reasons Ben, I met Ben, I known Ben for a long time, but we actually, when I moved here 16 years ago to Nashville, they had opened not long after that a Red Robin over here. We went to eat after church one Sunday, and I came out and there I was meeting Ben, or actually Ben was coming out. We were going in, and I saw Ben, and I'm like, we talked a little bit. And he said, I'm a big fan of yours. He said, I love your singing. He said, I want to produce a project on you. I want to produce something on you. And I was like, Ben, I appreciate that. So I just thought he was kidding. I thought, man, no way, Ben. I mean, because I just looked up to them like they're heaven's angels singing on earth, and
yeah, man,
and nobody's any better than the Isaacs and blah blah. This and the Bill Gaither organization is so big. And I was into country music, and I was on the outside of that, and I thought I'd never be anywhere close to that type of thing. But again, these are things that God does that you don't realize what he's doing at the time.
Right.
So I go on with my life, run into Ben periodically. I want to produce a project on you. I'm telling you. So finally, one day, there's a guy named Bill Carter. I don't know if you know Bill Carter or not. But
the writer?
He was involved with the Gaither organization. He was actually the attorney for the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
He was when the FBI, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated to kind of investigate all that and everything. He's a big name in so many people's lives. He was managed Reba McEntire. He heard me singing at a little thing I did in Rector, Arkansas for Johnny Cash to raise money for the Johnny Cash boyhood home. And I was opening, I'd done a couple of them actually, with Vince Gill and the Gatlins, and with Daley Vincent and Jason Crabb. I don't know why I couldn't think of it.
He can't sing. He can't sing, can he?
That's why I didn't want to call his name real quick.
Golly.
But anyway, I was on the shows with those guys, and I'm out there with me and a guitar, and I'm thinking, man, there's no way I can get up here and get to these people with just me and a guitar. But Bill heard me that night, and he was just taken with it. And he said, man, I'm going to Bill Gaither. He said, I'm telling him he's got to do a record on Jimmy Fortune. And again, these little God things are just happening here and there. So he gets Bill and says, hey, let's have a meeting. And we had a meeting, and I went to the meeting thinking, well, they just want to talk to me. They don't want to do this. But I'm like, we talked a little bit, and I said, well, I said, thank y'all for talking to me. I said, if you ever want to do something, just let me know. I said, no, don't get up. We want to do it now. We want to do this, get the ball rolling. Ben Isaac's going to produce. I'm like, oh my gosh, here it all falling into place. So Ben does this Hits and Hymns project for me, which was turned out to be a really great thing.
Yeah, it debuted at #1 on the Billboard charts, correct?
Right. It was #1 on a couple of Christian gospel, and debuted #10 on the country charts on Billboard. Debuted. And I mean, what are these? I mean, all these little things happening, and then eventually we did a classics album, which I went back and did like some country songs and some kind of pop rock stuff that I grew up on. These songs that just kind of, and it did really well. And then I did the God and Country CD lately, which became was album of the year, and it's done very well. Well, all along the way, about 2 years ago, Ben started talking about, I want to do a project with you and maybe do a quartet somewhere along the way. We got to get the right people involved. Well,
you did.
Mike Rogers was playing downtown, doing a little jam thing downtown, and Ben and I would go down periodically and sit in with him and play. And we were going back and doing all these old songs and stuff, and it was just magic. The harmony. People would come in off the street that would be listening to hear something, and they just keep pouring in, and it would just appealing to the people.
Yeah.
So then Bradley Walker starts coming up, and he would go and sit in every once in a while. So Ben says, this is it. This is what I want to put together. And so with that, it was Ben's idea, and he put it all together. We go to his house to meet, to pick out some songs, and we're in his living room. We start singing these songs, just a guitar and us just sitting there. And literally, it's just like we play it back on the little telephone thing, recorder, and we're sitting there listening to it and going, man, we felt the magic. We felt.
I'm telling you.
We didn't just hear it, we felt it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we knew that this, again, was a big God thing that was getting ready to happen. And we got in Ben's studio, put it all together. First, we went down and sang for the Gaithers and for the organization down in Brentwood, and just sitting around in the room, and they were blown away with it and said, oh, go with it, Joe. Just do what you want to do, get it out there. And so Ben did. He took the bull by the horns, and of course, it happened in this COVID year, but it's really taken on a life of its own, and it's got life out there in the on the Facebook and YouTube market, and also in Cracker Barrel. It's selling great, and
well, I've told Ben there's only one thing wrong with it, and there is one thing wrong with it, and you have to be on my side with this.
All right,
you guys have got to have a name. You got to have a name. I mean, you can't be Googling Fortune, Walker, Rogers, Isaacs to find this. I mean, you got. Well, come on, guys.
I tried to talk to Ben about that, but we came up with a lot of things. I thought my idea was I like the Dirt Road Disciples. I love that name.
There you go. Yeah, I mean something.
And then we had one I really loved, which Mike came up with, called Common Thread.
I like that too.
And Common Thread, I think that's good too. But yeah, and then the Brotherly Love thing has happened, and it's like.
But that's an album name. That's an album name.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, if the listeners and viewers of The Professional Noticer have not caught on, I mean, because I've talked about this before, but you got to, I mean, man, you go just check out one video on YouTube. You will download that whole thing in a heartbeat from iTunes or wherever, because, I mean, it's all good. It's all good.
Well, we're working on another project, and I'm like you, but maybe this will lead to having to define it more, because basically we put the brotherly love out there because of what was going on in the world. We just thought brotherly love is what we need,
Right.
And it is a message in that we look at each other like brothers, and we need that kind of love toward one another. We not only need it, we need it in our from bottom to top. from politics to whatever. We need some kind of common ground. We need, to look at each other and say, hey, I really have that love in my heart. You can see it. When you see a video of brotherly love, you see us looking at each other with respect and love and just because we really do genuinely care about each other.
Yeah.
And I think people pick up on that probably as much as any of the talent that's going on in that room. Bradley Walker, gosh, he just exudes personality in his voice. It's just, and it's also so much life in him. Even though he's in a wheelchair, he exudes so much of just life and heart and love, just that it's magical. And
I've never heard anybody, I've heard the Daddy Sang Bass song, I've heard that before, but every time I've ever heard it, I realized when I watched you guys do this, because when I bought that album, I downloaded the audio and the video. Okay, so sometimes I watch the audio, sometimes I'm listening to the video, or sometimes I watch the video, sometimes listen to the audio. And one of the things that I realized when I watched you guys do that Daddy Sang Bass is that I had never seen any group do it where every time I've seen a group do it, there's a guy singing lead, and then there's a guy over here that does Daddy Sang Bass, and then over here the guy goes, Mama sang tenor, and yet when Bradley sang the lead and dropped into that low voice, I was just like, you got to be kidding me. Because you could listen to Harold, you can listen to Harold and like Richard Sturban and these guys talk like that. But Bradley's voice is not like that. And when he dropped into that low register, I was blown away.
Well, Ben kind of picked everybody and for a reason, but Ben, he picked us for one thing, because he liked us. We all liked each other, loved each other, but also when the Statler Brothers sang, there's what I call the magical part of the Statler Brothers was a lot Harold and Dom, that big heavy voices in the middle. They had the heaviness. There's like a real heaviness of it. And like even me with singing tenor, even though it was a high tenor, sometimes it was a still heavy, kind of a heavy tenor. It wasn't like something that goes up into the sky and just, pierces through the clouds. But it was something that was tone wise. It was these straight tones, which Ben talks about a lot. Like a lot of people sing, and you hear vibrato, and then when they sing with somebody, the vibrato can get in the way of the blend, harmony lines, because so with all of us, we sing straight tones a lot, and we're able to control the vibrato, so we can make it straight tones when we want to, and have vibrato when you're singing a lead part. That's okay. But when you have vibrato when you're singing it with other people, it interferes with the tones and it messes things up. Kind of like you can throw you for a loop a little bit. But when you're singing harmonies, you have those straight tones. Bradley Walker has that edge, and even when his voice is big, and then he can drop into that low bass, and then when he does, it's not muddy. It's not muddy. It's clear.
Oh my gosh!
And crisp and clean. And so that's a magical part of that. Then you got Mike Rogers, who I can sing high. I go real high, but he can go over me and sing in a more of a kind of a head tone, but it's pretty, still pretty. It's kind of got that Vince Gill kind of a smoothness about it. And he can go right over top of me and sing as high as you want to. It don't matter. I can put any note on Mike Rogers and he can sing it over top of me. It don't matter. And it still sounds good. It's got that blend to it. And then Ben is probably one of the best ears that I've ever, of anybody that's ever sang a baritone part. He can sing lead, but his blend, I guess from blending with his beautiful sisters and his mom, is impeccable. I mean, when you hear him blend with somebody, matter of fact, he could sing parts where you might think Mike's singing, you might think I'm singing, and you might even think Bradley's singing. We switch parts all the time where you don't know who's who. And in the whole blend of it all.
Right. Because
So,
there were times that you were doing 3-part instead of 4-part harmony. It's just that.
yeah, which is magical about this too, because it's duets, it's trios, it's quartet, and it's also solos.
Right.
So it's in kind of involved. There's I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry is probably my favorite song on there. I'm not even singing on
And
that
you
song.
didn't even do it.
No, I didn't sing. I didn't, and I'm sitting back. I'm playing guitar, but I'm not singing. And I just sit back and I listen to that and go, wow. And with Mike and Ben, I can't tell who's singing what part sometimes.
Right.
Even they sometimes listen, did I sing that or did you sing that? And so it's that kind of thing. But this again, God put this together. We just are we're being vessels and tools that God can use, hopefully to bring people together and say, man, this is really good. This is something that people will like to see and like to hear. And I know I've got critics that always criticize things that I do because they know that I can take criticism. They know that I can, and a lot of times I learn from people saying it. But man, when people come up and talk about this project, they ain't got nothing bad to say. They just like, man, my gosh.
Except that you ain't got a name.
Exactly. That right there. And we're gonna have to talk to Ben about that.
We got to, man. We got to. Hey, one more question about this, then I'm gonna move into a last subject I have. You've been very generous with your time. I am very curious about a place on this album, on this Brotherly Love album, and I don't know if this occurred to you. You know, I'm good friends with Don Reid, and I've known Don for a long time. Known Don longer than I've known you, but Don and I've kept up, and I think, you know, when you're talking about the sound of the Statlers, you know, to me that dominant sound is Don's voice, that voice, and when you guys, I was glad you guys on the Brotherly Love album, and when I talk about you guys, I'm talking about, you know, your group, Fortune, Walker, Rogers, Isaac. Yeah. You guys did Class of 57. You know, it's kind of a tribute to the Statlers. And I loved hearing it. I thought it was very interesting that you did not do the part that you did when you were with the Statlers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. That was my part. It was Lou singing.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah. Here's the part that
Betty runs a trailer park. Jan sells Tupperware. Yeah, that was my part. I always did that. And of course, it was Lou's part. What's what he did.
Right. So. Well, here's what turned my head. There is a place, and I had to go and look at the video to see who was doing it, and it's Mike Rogers, who I have not met. Mm-hmm. But you guys have your own sound with this. The song is awesome. But man, there is one line that he does, and it sounds like Don in that song. Mm-hmm. And it's I can't remember exactly. It's the shoot. It's one of the add-ons at the end of a verse.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite lines is "Things get complicated when you get past 18."
Yeah, I mean that's one of the greatest lines of all.
Ever since of all time. I mean, I listen to that and I literally go, and to think that every person in that just is real.
Yeah.
I just met the sister there when I was up in Virginia. I went to a funeral, and my father-in-law passed away, and while I was there, this woman came up and she said, "I'm Freddie's sister, the one in Class 57 that committed suicide."
Wow.
She said, and I run into people all the time that were in that song. That my name was in that song, and it was so real. I mean, Class 57, man. I mean,
yeah. And Freddie,
you listen to the writing of the Statler Brothers and Don's impeccable record keeping that he did. This new book that he just put out.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God! I mean, it's got everything, and I just had to thank him. I called him up and I said, "Thank you, Don." I mean, I've thanked him before, but nobody keeps that kind of records.
I'll tell you the line. The line is when Mike Rogers goes, "Living life day to day is never what it seems." Just listen to that sometime. Tell me if that doesn't sound like Don to you. It does to me. But I just think you're right. I think that song, sheesh.
We tried to do that. We did it to try to do something just to say, hey, we love you guys and we never will forget.
Right.
And we won't. And there'll be more to come in the future. But when I listen to, I've heard people do the Statler Brothers stuff, and it's just not, I mean, it'll never be the same, because there was the magical part of that was the way it was supposed to be when it was created. It was Don and Harold with that heavy, big sound in their voices, not just in their singing, but in their talking. When they talk, they literally would shake the ground. God blessed them with this voice, and they took it and created a sound that will never be duplicated again.
Right.
Never.
Yeah.
In time, it never was. It was only that one time. It was for us, and thank God I got to sing with those guys, for that time, almost 21 years that I was with them. But then Phil had a distinct sound in his voice, even though you may hear his voice and it might not stick out to you but when you put it in there and you hear the blend and this magical tone that's in the middle, kind of holding everything together. And then you add, Lou was a stylist, what I call a stylist. He sang intricate tenor parts, and he had this real lilty sound.
He did.
Not necessarily a power driver sound, but he was more just lilty and put that, and it was magical. If it had been reversed and I had been there before, it probably wouldn't have been the same. Matter of fact, I mean, he wrote, for goodness, Flowers on the Wall. I mean, that's one of the most brilliant songs ever.
And can you believe the moment that happened? Can you believe the moment that happened at the Grammy Awards? And the nominees are the Supremes, Stop in the Name of Love, the Beatles, Help, the Statler Brothers, Flowers on the Wall, and the winner is the Statler Brothers, Flowers on the Wall. Oh my gosh! Are you kidding?
Say no more.
Yeah, I mean,
say no more.
That is just incredible. Hey, I got two things I want to tell you that I feel like I need to tell you, and then I got a last question for you, or something I want you to talk about. There's two things I want to tell you. One is I want you to know that Joe Bonzel he's a buddy, and Joe was on the podcast maybe a month and a half ago, and Gene, the bass, that Gene, and he substituted for Richard. When Richard had Achilles surgery, Gene went in and toured with him a little bit. And I said to Joe, I said, hey, I'm curious, if your Achilles blows out on you, who are you gonna get? And he said, I think Jimmy Fortune would be the person that I said, man, if you did, Jimmy would immediately become the number one answer to a country music trivia question. What person has sang with the Statler Brothers and the Oak Ridge Boys? I mean, oh my God. But anyway, I thought you'd get a kick out of knowing that. And
I love it. Joe Bonzel is there's nobody else that would fit that mold but Joe Bonzel.
That's right.
I'm serious.
That's exactly
his voice,
right.
His tone, his personality, his energy that he brings. I mean, I've been just a big fan of his ever since I've known him.
Yeah,
and they've been so nice to me. They took me on the road with them, let me open for them some of my first shows, and
wow,
I'll never forget them for that. I'll never and they helped me a lot to become, coming from a group like the Statler Brothers and trying to be, which Don gave me some of the best advice anybody could ever give me. He said, Jimmy, I told him I was going to be going on my own, and I, didn't feel like God wanted me to stop now. He wanted me to continue on.
Right.
But I was scared. I was scared to death. And like, I didn't want to fail, but I didn't, I just wanted to be successful and do what I needed to do. And he said, well, only I can give you this advice. He said, be you, don't be anybody else. He said, we fell in love with Jimmy Fortune. When you walked through the door, we saw you, we saw your personality, we didn't even hear you sing yet. We just fell in love with who you are. You can't be anybody else. Some of the best advice anybody ever gave me.
Right.
Because if I'd gone out and I put together a group to compete with the Statler Brothers, you're not going to compete with that. So don't even try. And so I did have some people say, why didn't you just put together a group? And because I knew it. They're going to be compared to that.
Yeah.
And so this, the brotherly love thing happening now after about 20 years later,
yeah,
I feel okay with that.
Absolutely.
I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Well,
but at the time I had to recreate myself, and so that's what I did.
Well, the other memory that I have of the Statlers that stands out to me, and I honestly cannot remember. I'm sorry, but I can't remember if you were there or Lou was there, because what happened so overshadowed my memory of anything else, anybody. It was just what happened. When you've been around as many audiences as we have, to say that you can point out the number one moment that you heard people react to something is pretty amazing. And so I was the opening act at a big convention date, and it was like the National Convention of Funeral Directors. And were you there? Because the Statlers came out. The first song,
I remember
I'll go
doing some of those.
to my grave loving you. And those people came unglued. I mean, they came unglued. It was a moment that I will never forget. It was hilarious.
Well, I must have been there, because I do remember that, a lot of those, and we did a bunch of them through the years. And,
Isn't that funny?
Some of them were when I first came with the Statler Brothers, and so
that was it.
Why that would go over there, and that's a perfect song for that.
So here's my last question, and it's really a suggestion or maybe a wish or something like that, and that is, buddy, you have led an amazing life, and you've kept your head on your shoulders in an amazing way. And so you need to write a book. You got to write a book.
It's funny you said that. I'm 4 years into one right now.
Really?
And, yeah. I'm looking at, it's called Untold Fortune.
Untold Fortune.
It's the name. It's the name of the book. And I teamed up with my neighbor, happens to be Dave Clark, of all people, who's written 26 number one Christian songs. He's written a couple of books as well, but he is helping me with the book. And we've been talking about it for now about 4 years now, and put it all together, because it doesn't just, first when we got into it, we thought it was just going to be a book about me being with the Statler Brothers and through that time and everything, which is a whole book in itself.
Sure.
But I said, my story doesn't begin there. My story begins, and he went with me back home to Virginia, where I was raised, and I could tell him the story where this my mother's mother passed away when Mom was 2 weeks old from blood poison, and this woman named Miss Grills from all places, Nashville, Tennessee, was coming to Virginia to teach at a one-room school there where my mom lived. And this guy stopped on horseback, told her about what had happened. My grandfather's wife had died. He was trying to raise my mother, which was a baby at the time, and 2 other children.
Wow.
And he was telling me he couldn't do it. And God spoke to her at that moment and said, you go to that home and you help raise that little girl and those children. And she bypassed the school and went there to my grandfather's home, told him that God had sent her there to help raise those kids. My grandfather moved out into the smokehouse. She moved into the house and raised my mom until she was 18 years old, taught her the Bible, taught her about how important prayer was, taught her about all this stuff. That's where the book begins. And because that moment defined my family. It defined my mother praying for my dad until he overcame alcoholism and he became a Christian and he became my hero. And this defined every moment that's happened in our lives because of that one woman that listened to God. And that was what drives this whole book. It's not just the things about me, but it's about my family and about God and how he's been so in prayer, and forgiveness. And
I'm so glad you're doing that. I am so glad you're doing that. Just hurry up, hurry up.
We got a meeting tomorrow. We've had, there's so many things happening that, we get to, where's the end of this book going to be? Or is it going to be to be continued? I mean, I guess, but it doesn't matter. We do need to get it done. I think, with all this time, God's really been trying to tell me something, and I'm trying to listen to it. And you saying that, it just drives it home.
That is awesome, buddy. Well, man,
we need to get it done.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us. My favorite things to listen to are where, two people are sitting around and talking about memories and talking about, and so I think people are really going to enjoy this. And I really want to add to your numbers. I want to add, I want people to go and be a part of that Brotherly Love CD and man, download both of them. Download the audio and the video because they're both great. And I enjoyed the heck out of that. So anyway, buddy, let's please keep up. And
we will.
And anytime you want to come on, you just let me know. And we got another thing we do. We do that 2 times a week, doing a live show here from Wisdom Harbor Studios. It's a daily, it's kind of 12:15. And we don't know what day we're going to do it, but we do it a couple days a week, and it's live, and we call it the Blue Plate Special. And so we'll get you on there sometime, get you singing, and so it's kind of crazy. But thank you,
Andy,
Jimmy.
I want to thank you for being such a bright light in my life and in so many others' lives. Thank you for what you do. You are following God and doing the right thing in your life, and I admire you for it, and thank you again for doing God's work, man. You're a wonderful person, and thank you for being my friend, buddy.
Man, I'm honored to be your friend. Always honored. All right, thank you much.
You too, brother. God bless you, man. God be with you.
Observations and answers. That's what we do here on the Professional Noticer, and our commitment to you is to bring you the very best. And I must just brag on myself here just for a second and say that I have overdone myself this week. I've just outdone myself because I'm bringing you not just the very best, but the very, very best. And this is a longtime friend of mine. You know this person, and we'll get into some of the awards and accomplishments, but please welcome Don Reid, the lead singer of the Statler Brothers. Don, how are you?
I am great, Andy, and I thank you for having me. You and I are communicating all the time, email and telephone, that sort of thing, but I don't get to see you often. So now I'm actually seeing you today.
I know. I think about you so much, and obviously we do. We text and email back and forth, and I'm blown away at your ability to write long form, because you've written so many songs for the Statlers through the years. But then when you guys said, okay, we're not going to do this anymore, we're just going to take it easy, we're going to retire, you didn't take it easy. You started writing books.
Yeah. And the biggest adjustment there was, for 40 years, I had taught myself how to write a story 3 minutes long and make it rhyme. That's what you work on. And
right.
Then I started, and the first book publisher said, well, you've got 300 pages to tell your story, go for it. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's not how my mind is trained. I had to rethink the whole thing all over again.
It is amazing. Jimmy Yeary, the songwriter, is a very close friend of mine. And I am amazed just watching that process and knowing, I have like 60, 80,000 words to kind of get to the point, and you guys have to get to the point so quickly and make it rhyme. Is that something, I know some of it had to come naturally to you when you were younger, but how did you develop that?
We developed it, and I speak for myself and my brother and all the other staff, by listening to other songwriters. We would just sit for hours and listening to music all day long. And we would pick out some of the old pop guys, whether it's Berlin or whoever it was, or the country writers, Arlen Howard. And you learn by listening and dissecting and analyzing what they were doing. And then you try to emulate that, and then you come up with your own style in the process.
See, that's interesting to me, because I think too, people ask about being a writer of books, and I don't think you can do it well if you're not a big reader. If to see how it's done, and I mean you have done it. And let me just say, this is the first time we've been face to face since Harold passed away, and that was I know it was a tough time for you guys, but that was a tough day for me too. I just loved your brother.
Well, everybody did, and he was my closest friend, my brother, my confidant, and I put even more in the new book about him. And it's I miss him more every day, to be quite honest, but I realize that that's how it's supposed to be. That was God's will, and we have continued on, and he was certainly at peace with his life and throughout his life and at the end. And I am just so happy and so proud. As I've said before, maybe the bravest man I ever knew, the way he handled it.
Harold was one of those kind of people. I see a lot of people that somebody will say, well, they're so funny, they should be a comedian. But you and I know there's a big difference in being funny for your friends and being funny consistently and making that what you're doing for the 100th time have that illusion of spontaneity. And man, there was nobody better than Harold at that.
Well, I have to agree with you. He was, and we realized that. And as you know, you certainly have that knack too, that you think funny. Harold always said comedy was saying what's on everybody else's mind.
Right.
That's kind of how he operated, because you see something, you think, well, but I'm not going to say that. Well, he would say it. He would say what other people was thinking. And you know yourself, and sometimes with a comedy routine, you do that and people are just in the floor. So they're thinking, oh man, I was thinking the same thing. And he just said it. And so,
right. Oh my gosh. The new book that you have out, I talked about it the other day on the Blue Plate special, because I must be totally out of the loop, but I didn't even know you were working on that. And, there was one time that I called you and I said, man, come on now, where's another book? Because I love the fiction books that you did. And so now here is this anthology that has every single one. I mean, the stories behind those songs. How long did it take you to do this?
I think probably about 2 years from the time I actually sat down and wrote the first word until it was finished and sent to publishing. And the whole sort of a challenge from my sons. My two sons, Dee and Langdon, and I eat lunch every Wednesday together. That's been ever since I retired. That's our standard procedure. And we have his favorite restaurant we go to. And they got to talk, and we got to them telling stories. They said, you need to put a book, and they came up with the idea of writing about our music. And I said, I don't know if I got enough to say about that. Well, I said, and after a couple of chapters, I realized that, well, maybe I do. So that's where that's what was born from, just conversation.
To me, and I'll tell you, I'm halfway through the book right now. I mean, I just got it, and I'm not skimming this one. I'm reading every word, and I'm halfway through it, and I love it. But it also occurs to me that tons of people are going to love this. But if nobody ever read it, what a great gift to your sons. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And then to the fans. And I kind of, somewhere in there, I think it might have been at the forward or maybe at the end, I make a challenge to other artists to do this with their music. I mean, think about your favorite artist, your favorite recording artist, be it Johnny Cash or Dean Martin or whoever it might have been or whoever it is. And you think, would it have been nice if they had sat down and told the stories of their career and why they did this and that. So I challenge all the acts that have been in the business for so many years, do that for your fans. It'll do something for your heart also.
Yeah, because this is not only the story of writing each song, it's the story of recording it and what was happening and the people that were in your life at that time. You know, my wife, Polly, she just loves Johnny Cash. I mean, she's always loved Johnny Cash. And so I said, well, yeah, you know, you like Johnny Cash, you're going to want to read Don's book right away because there's so many stories in there. And, you know, the story of June giving you that antique music stand as you guys left the house that day.
Yeah.
There are things that we would never know.
Yeah. They were great people, John and June. Where, you know, if without them, there would have been no Statler Brothers. John picked us up off the road and gave us a job for 9 years, and we were there and did everything. We learned everything from him, all of his TV, all of his records, all of his concerts. So we were very close with him, and he was quite something to us.
Tell me about, now that John and June are gone, you can act mad about this if you want to, but tell me about the time that you guys were ready to record Daddy Sang Bass, and you went over and John's going to record it, and you got to back him up on it.
Exactly. Well, we were in the room with Carl Perkins one night when he wrote it, while he was writing it. And so we got to do it. And we said, no, we got to have that song. He said, it's yours. Well, about 2 weeks later, John called us, says, come into Nashville, because we were still living in Virginia. Come to Nashville. I'm recutting tomorrow. Okay, so we fly to Nashville, and that's the song he's got. We said, whoa, I thought we were going to record that. But he had heard it, and Carl gave it to him. And I don't blame Carl. We weren't all that big an act at the time. And so John got the record, and we wound up singing on it. But we recorded it later for an album.
You know, one of the things that I was able to do, I mean, having known you guys for so long and having sat in so many award shows that you guys just wore your legs out back and forth up on the stage, and the winner is the Statler Brothers. I mean, my gosh, how many times did I hear that? This is the first time I've ever actually counted, and you know, you guys were, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm counting 9 times the CMA Vocal Group of the Year. 9 times.
Exactly. Yeah. We were blessed, and it's all I can tell you. We were blessed, and we were thankful. And every year, whatever award it was always more special than the one before, because, you know, they think the people still were giving that to them.
But see, Don, you say that you were blessed, but I would look at that. I watched you guys, and I think that part of the reason you were blessed is because you guys really blessed so many people, and you were grateful. You guys never showed. I never saw a hint of arrogance or dismissiveness. And you know, I was an opening act, right? And so as an opening act, I mean, there are people that I don't have great stories about. But you know, you guys, I always tell people, I say, you know, the Statlers, they treated me just like they treated some star long before I had ever earned any right to be treated nicely or as peers by these guys. And I just, so well, you guys blessed a ton of people.
We always liked you first. We always tried to treat everybody the same. I think the 4 of us, we kept each other level and grounded.
Right.
We were just four guys that grew up together back in Virginia. And that's how we always thought of ourselves, no matter whatever was being, bestowed on us throughout the world. We were always thankful for that and flattered by that. But we knew who we were inside, and that didn't change.
I'm curious about the song Flowers on the Wall. I've always been curious about that song. And it's one of my favorites. I mean, not just of yours. It's just one of my favorites. And so I'm very curious about that song. Because I think maybe more so now, because I know when you guys won the Grammy for that song, and now I know who else was in the category. Oh my gosh. I mean, the Supremes, Stop in the Name of Love, the Beatles, Help, and the winner is Flowers on the Wall, the Statler Brothers. Oh, I mean.
We were brand new and green and were not expected to win. I promise you, we were just as shocked as everybody else was.
And that song, that song, there are some songs that you hear that you think, it sounds like it's from the 60s, or it sounds like it's from, that is not a song that sounds dated. And a lot of people may not be aware that song was used in Pulp Fiction, in the movie, in Quentin Tarantino's movie.
Exactly.
With Bruce Willis driving along and flowers on it. And I love it. Bruce Willis goes, Captain Kangaroo. I mean, what a great tribute to you guys. Tell me what was behind that song, though.
What was behind it?
Yeah.
Lou wrote it. Lou DeWitt, one of the Stattlers, wrote it. And he just wanted to write a song about a guy that was so lonesome, so lonely, that he would be sitting in a room counting the flowers on the wallpaper, counting flowers on the wall. And so that's where that he would play solitaire with a deck of 51. Doesn't even have enough cards. And so you can't go out, you can't win, you don't have enough cards. And somebody that's just that desperate and that lonely. And that's the song that he wrote.
That song, that's kind of what when I hear that, I hear a person dealing with depression,
Yeah, it's real close to depression.
Effectively dealing with it.
A bouncy rhythm to it that kind of played against the lyric. But you break the lyric down as far as poetry, it's pretty much a downer.
But it's not a downer, because the guy, I think he's effectively dealing with it. He's like fighting it, and he's saying, hey, like right off the bat, he tells his friend, I'm fine. I'm fine. And so I love that song. And then, I loved, was the first song that, obviously, when you're beating the Beatles and the Supremes, that's a monster, okay? But did Class of 57, did that just take you guys into a different level?
Yeah, lasted 70, got into that nostalgia period that was very early into that, but where we were writing about our own memories. And it got pretty personal with that song, as a matter of fact, some of the people we were writing about. And it created more music to come of that same ilk. And it did. It kind of got our feet stable into country feel, and as did earlier Bed of Roses and some songs like that. So.
Bed of Roses, that was kind of a risky choice at the time, wasn't it?
We first pitched that song to Kenny Rogers, and this is like 69. And Kenny was thinking about it. He kept it for a couple of months. And he gave it. I said, guys, I'd love to record it, but Harold had written it. So I'd love to record it, but it kind of against my image. I'm scared of it. And we thought, it's against our image too. We should be scared of it, but we weren't. So we went ahead and recorded it. But I can see why he didn't take it. Absolutely.
But then he had a hit with Ruby,
There you go.
But man, I loved Bed of Roses. And I suppose, and this is, this is me reading probably stuff into it that, and I know you probably have people ask you about lyrics and you go, well, I never thought of that. Yeah. It's funny to me that some of my books are in schools. They're in school systems, and every now and then they'll send me somebody will send me some test or something that they took, and it's hilarious to me. I remember reading one from the Traveler's Gift, and it said, what was the author? What was he trying to project? What was the symbolism when David Ponder walked into the bright room? And this poor kid had written, it's like 3 or 4 paragraphs about it. And I remember telling Polly and saying, as God is my witness, when I wrote that, I just, he's walking into a room, it's got to be bright or dark. I just picked bright. And which makes me wonder if, Faulkner probably was like, I didn't write all this symbolism in it. But
Shakespeare would be shocked at what we have made of him, probably. He
probably.
Would say the same thing, all the analyzing all these lines and words,
But I think you guys, if there was somebody in a totally different genre that I would say it kind of epitomizes the Statlers to me, it would be Norman Rockwell. I look at some of what he did, and I think that, when you guys do Class of 57, when you do Do You Know You Are My Sunshine, when you did Do You Remember These, this is us, man.
That's a great compliment, and I thank you. We've had people say kind of like Norman Rockwell set the music. And even Kurt Vonnegut was a big fan. He used to come to a lot of our concerts. And he said to us, and he said this in one of his books, he said, Class of 57 should be the national anthem. And I'm not really sure what he meant by that. He wrote a lot of things I wasn't always sure what he meant. But it was nice to know that it had that kind of monumental appeal and effect on people, that the nostalgia and the Americana that we were writing. I'm touched by that today.
And this podcast, we're in 112 countries now, have listeners in 112 countries. And so as unlikely as it may be that somebody may not have heard some of these songs, you guys, you must, number one thing you got to do is you got to get the book. I want you to get this book, but then I also want you to go and listen to this music. And, the Class of 57, I understand why he said that, because I played that last night for my sister. I was over at their house, and I said, hey, I'm going to get to talk to Don tomorrow. And I said, listen to this. And we both sat there and thought, man, how true this is. The Class of 57 has dreams. We all thought we'd change the world, with
our great works and schemes.
With our great works and deeds. But things get complicated. When you get past 18, the Class of 57 has dreams. Boy, that is multi-generational. That's not a theme that goes out of style.
Harold and I wrote that, and I have said, and I say it in the book also, we were given these words. These words were on loan to us. The Lord gave them to us. So we can't accept ownership. But I think probably that's two of the better lines that we ever wrote, is together or apart. If things get complicated when you get past 18, look at Class 57 at its dream. Because things do. And you don't know that until you get past 18, just how complicated things can get.
Right. It is amazing. My boys are 18 and 20 right now. And I know you got your boys right there with you. And it is amazing to look and know, Now, your guys are older, but my guys, I look at them sometimes and I go, you don't, you can't possibly understand some of my feelings. You can't possibly, until you have a child of your own, you can't possibly understand how much you could love another human being. And you can't possibly understand how you can look back at yourself at 18 and think, wow, I mean, how many times? Yeah. Right. How many times in our lives did we think we knew, but you find out later you didn't? Don, is there any song that you go, I wish we hadn't recorded that?
Yeah, I talk about that in the book too.
I hadn't gotten to that part.
Okay, there's a book in there there's a song in there that has to do with the drug scene. This happened in the 60s, I guess, in the 40s. Early 70s. It is called The Needle. It is a very well-written song. It was done good, but it wasn't who we were, and I never felt like we probably should have been singing that. We were never into that, any kind of drugs or drinking songs. But for some reason we did that. And I thought, as well written as it was, I wish it hadn't been a part of our repertoire.
Yeah.
Right. You'll see.
Other than Daddy Sang Bass, is there one that you missed? Is there one that...
Do you want another story?
Yeah.
But me and Bobby McGee.
No way.
Oh, wait, I think it's the greatest country song ever written. Chris was in his early days, and he used to go over to the hotel when we were practically living in Nashville doing the Cash TV show back in the 60s. And he'd sing all that new stuff he was writing. And we heard all that stuff, all those hits that he was writing before anybody else did. And he sang Bobby McGee to us one night. He said, "Chris, that's it. We want it." He said, "Okay, it's yours." A week later, we're back in town, and he comes knocking on the door. He said, "Guys, I got to tell you a little something." He said, "I got you drinking last weekend. And I gave that song to Roger Miller, and he's already cut it." And Roger knew it had to be done fast, and he'd already cut it to the cake. So yeah, we lost that one too, but we recorded it again later on an album. But so those things do get away from you.
Wow.
We held on to feeling.
What is your favorite song that you guys did? What song do you look at and you go, man, that's... Because there's a lot of songs that I look at of yours and I think, that's a lifetime's work. That song right there, man, that's it. But what do you look at and you think, man, God put me on earth to write this one?
It's probably, Andy, not going to be a familiar hit. Probably some
That's okay.
Album. And I'm going to talk about it. It was from one of the later albums. Again, I talked there about it. It's called More Like My Daddy Than Me. And it's about how, as you age, you get to becoming your parent, and you get to thinking of more like your parents, and you get to looking more like your daddy than you look like yourself when you look in the mirror, even, and the things that you think and the things that you say. And that was probably the one that I would have to say just kind of still is in my heart.
I got to listen to that. I was in Jackson, Alabama a few months ago, and my daddy has been dead 40 years. And I was standing in the Western Auto with a friend. My daddy's name was Larry. And I was standing in the Western Auto with a friend that owned the Western Auto. And this old man came in that I've never seen in my life. And so my friend's named Tom Henley. And we were standing there. And this old man walked in and just kind of walked by us. And he said, "Tom, Larry."
Okay. So
and I'm like,
that moment right there.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah. I cannot wait to hear that song. You guys did 40 albums. Is that a number that when you hit it, you said that's enough, or was it a time thing, or did you pre-plan the retirement?
We pre-planned it by a couple of years. We knew that we were going to do it. but we decided that we would tell people a year ahead of time. We'd let it be known publicly so that anybody wanted to come, they could come see a show and come see us and say goodbye. So
well, they did. I wasn't there, but I watched the video of that farewell concert. Just unbelievable. I talked to Bill and Gloria Gaither quite often, and they wrote the foreword to this book, and they are just such great admirers of yours too. So
they're great people. I love them both personally and professionally. They've done things with gospel music, Southern gospel, that needed to be done for so many years. They brought a certain class to it and broadened the whole field.
Okay, I got one more odd question, and
all right.
and that is, since you've retired, have you heard a song that you thought, dadgummit, I wish we'd have gotten a hold of that one?
I can't really name one, but it does happen. And I even hear songs I think, man, I should have written that because that's such a great idea. I wish I'd have done that. I wish I'd have written that. If we'd have been around, we would have recorded that. Can't right off the top of my head think of one, but it does happen to you.
How many years did your television show go?
7 years.
7 years. I was a guest on that. I remember that. And so, buddy, I can't urge people enough. The Statler Brothers, an anthology. This is the definitive work. And if you ever thought you might want to write a song, if you ever thought you liked music, if you ever thought you were interested in what, the thought process, it's the best book. People ask me about books on writing all the time. And this book captures not just how you found the words, but how you found the moods, how you work together, with Harold or with Lou or Jimmy. It's amazing to me, and it's a book worth having. It's a book worth giving, and I really urge people to get a hold of this.
You're a good man and a good friend for saying all that. I appreciate those kind words, and certainly I understand why people ask you about writing, because you have had a stack of books that you have written, and I've got every one of them, and I'm so you have what you do on stage and how you put it in on the pages, and you've mastered so many fields of comedy and just write out good entertainment, and the serious books you've written.
Well, you're kind, and Don, thank you for taking the time to do this. I am honored, truly honored, to call you my friend.
As it right back to you, pal. Thank you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. Hey, quick question. Where do you seek wisdom? Allow me to suggest wisdomharbor.com. That's wisdom, Harbor. O-U-R. It's not mine, it's ours. So go there now and get your free 5-minute guided tour, and then get your free 30 days, okay? Become a member of Wisdom Harbor. Do it for your family, your business, and your schools. wisdomharbor.com. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the mental energy I have, tiny bit though it is, for you. Seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, smile while you talk. Don't breathe anybody else's air. Keep your mask on, but make sure you have a positive answer to the question, how's it going? And so, until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limford. The Noticer theme, written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. exotic leather-bound journals provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by YouBoughtJustBeforeTheUpgrade.com. At YouBoughtJustBeforeTheUpgrade.com, we're buying back all the products you bought, only to find out if you'd have waited a little longer, you could have had the bigger, better, belled and whistled item for the same price. Have you ever found yourself walking out of the Apple store with that fancy new phone, or maybe that groovy new watch, but as you walked into your home ready to show off your shiny new gadget, your kid comes running down the hallway saying, "They just released the newer one." Now you're left wondering what to do. We've seen it over and over again. But at YouBoughtJustBeforeTheUpgrade.com, we'll buy back all your seemingly useless junk for a fraction of the price. Now you can head back to that store and reclaim that feeling of being on the cutting edge. Just make sure you stop somewhere on your way home today. With luck, you can just miss the upgrade again. That's YouBoughtJustBeforeTheUpgrade.com.